in that spirit, we gather here today to hear three wonderful speakers from very distinct perspectives, representing the breadth and depth of diversity in our community. So I invite you to open your hearts and to open your minds to receive what is familiar and comfortable, and hold with gentle openness what is new, perhaps unfamiliar, maybe even something that you might not agree with. That's why we're here, to listen to one another with deep respect. And if anything you hear leads you to get that tightness in your tummy, that's normal. It's our human way of dealing with something that's unfamiliar. Simply notice it and be kind with yourself and each other as we hold everything today with compassion and openness. So we're blessed today to hear from three faith leaders: Abbess Schrader of Green Gulch Farm Zen Center, Sister Elizabeth Padilla from the Brahma Kumaris residing at Anabudi Retreat Center in Nevada, and Professor Reverend Yolanda Norton from San Francisco Theological Center. So I'll introduce each speaker, and then I'll also serve as timekeeper, so there's no need for them or any of us to worry. Just relax and enjoy these three leaders from our community. So our first speaker is Abbess Nancy Schrader, who has been a resident of the Zen Center for over 35 years, becoming abiding abbess at Green Gulch Farm Zen Center in March 2014, who has held most of the monastic positions at Zen Center and has been an active supporter of programs for children, people of color, the gay and lesbian community, and the interfaith community, having also served on our Marin Interfaith Council Board of Directors. In 2008, she was elected to the Marin Women's Hall of Fame, and in 2010, she was appointed to the board of the Marin Community Foundation. She received Dharma transmission from Rev. Anderson in 1999, and she has been a long-time champion of the Marin Interfaith Council, and we're very pleased to have her here with us today. Please welcome Abbess Schrader.
Many old, friendly faces, familiar faces, and lots of brand new faces. I think that's amazing. So the room is packed, and some years it's not been quite so packed, so this is really encouraging for all of us. Did you hear that? So, my friends here on the panel, and I have been asked to speak to you today about the spiritual tradition that each of us represents, but in particular, the role or status of women in our traditions. So my plan for this morning is to give you a sampling of some of the stories and contributions that have been made by women in the Zen tradition. Historically, there's not really much I can say that is positive about how women have been included, regarded, or respected as serious practitioners within the Zen tradition, and particularly as teachers or as role models. In fact, not so much has been cherished down through the centuries that was either written by women or that features women in a story. And yet we know that women have played a profound role in all societies and in all religions through all time. And for that reason, a very lovely book called The Hidden Lamp, edited by two dear friends of our Zen Center community, Florence Kaplow and Susan Moon, recounts, as it states in the subtitle, stories from 25 centuries of awakened women. So this collection of stories, both ancient and contemporary, by and about women, was painstakingly gathered and edited, and then it was given to 100 contemporary Buddhist women teachers to add their own short reflections. So it's one of these older stories, a story from the 13th century Japan, that I'm going to read to you now. And it's called Chiyono's No Water, No Moon. Chiyono was a servant in a Zen convent who wanted to practice zazen, seated meditation. One day she approached an elderly nun and asked, I am of humble birth, I can't read or write, and I must work all the time. Is there any possibility that I could attain the way of Buddha, even though I have no skills? The nun answered her, this is wonderful, my dear. In Buddhism, there are no distinctions between people. There is only this. Each person must hold fast to the desire to awaken and to cultivate a heart of great compassion. People are complete just as they are. If you don't fall into delusive thinking, there's no Buddha and there is no sentient being. There is only one complete nature. If you want to know your true nature, you need to turn toward the source of your delusive thinking. And this we call Zazen. Chiono said with great happiness, with this practice as my companion, I have only to go about my daily life practicing day and night. After months of wholehearted practice, she went out on a full moon night to draw water from a well. The bottom of her old bucket, held together by bamboo strips, suddenly gave way, and the reflection of the moon vanished along with the water. When she saw this, she attained great realization and wrote this enlightenment poem in celebration. With this and that, I tried to keep the bucket together, and then the bottom fell out. Where water does not collect, the moon does not dwell. So this story has all the, excuse me, water. So this story has all the juicy parts of what makes Zen practice so inspiring to many of us. There's the great mystery at the heart of life itself, which has been clouded over by assumptions that we make about ourselves as being not good enough, not smart enough, or not pure enough to realize the great mystery of life itself. And then we have this deep wish, such as Chiono had, to become free of such hurtful and delusional thinking. Nobody knows how or when it happens, or whether it even happens at all, but there does seem to be a moment, however long or however short, when letting go of it all, one realizes that they are already complete. They are already completely free. When the bottom falls out of your bucket, along with the water and the reflection of the moon, go all of those tightly held notions we have about ourselves, including that we are men or that we are women, we are gay or straight, old or young, rich or poor, alive or dead, Buddhas or sentient beings. These notions, once seen for what they truly are, mere words that lack true meaning, is at the heart of what the Buddha found when he turned his attention onto the source of his own delusional thinking, that is, to the human mind itself. I think one of the main reasons that I found Zen practice so compelling and nourishing for over 40 years is the generous and liberating view that the Buddha had about our human life after sitting for 7 days under a tree quietly, considering the source of his own suffering. Once he discovered the source, he also discovered the cure, which he then told to others who've tried it for themselves, and then they taught it to others, and so on for 2,500 years. The formula was really fairly simple, but as the saying goes, not so easy. The part that's not so easy is what Chiono took upon herself to study day and night. She took upon herself a sincere commitment to look at the source of her delusional thinking. This practice of attending to our thoughts is the very same practice that the Buddha was doing under the tree of enlightenment. He was watching the workings of his own mind. One of the first things he saw was an army of demons threatening him with destruction if he did not cease his quest for awakening. When he remained seated in the face of the painful onslaught, the army vanished. Next, he was besieged by a trio of beautiful dancing boys and dancing girls, calling to him to come and play, and to forget all about his wish to bring an end to human suffering. Still, he remained seated, and with that, the dancers also vanished. Finally, he found himself facing the greatest demon of them all, called Mara, the evil one, master of illusion. Mara suddenly appeared in the clearing, sat facing the young man directly, and hissed, "I have given you every chance to run away. Now I will destroy you." The Buddha replied, "No, you won't, because I know who you are." Mara shrank back with a howl and cried, "You don't know who I am." And the Buddha replied, "Oh, but I do. You are myself." And with that, Mara vanished, leaving the newly awakened Buddha sitting quietly under a tree as the bees buzzed around the flowers and a young woman passed by carrying a jug of water on her head. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," the young man replied. From there, this new teacher went out into the world to share his liberating vision with others. As the centuries passed, hundreds and thousands of humans, men and women alike, have found relief from their own vivid imaginations through this practice of sitting quietly and allowing the images appearing in their minds to simply pass on by. So this transmission of the Buddha's teaching, given from one person to another, is what in Zen we call warm hand to warm hand, teacher to student, on and on and on. And for me, there was something very alive and present in this approach to a spiritual life. And yet I can remember asking my own teacher many years ago, "So where are the women teachers?" He replied, "Why don't you look under your nose?" Well, I thought he was being facetious at that time, but actually he was reaching out his warm hand to mine. So it's with great gratitude to the male teachers and to our Dharma brothers who welcomed us into what had pretty much been a bastion of male monasticism that much has changed in the years since I first began to study Zen. We have 2 women who are currently abbots at the Zen Center, myself and Linda Ruth Cutts. Many of our students are women, and a number of them are priests, having done years of monastic practice. Some of us are mothers as well. In fact, we in the Zen Center community are in the midst of a new and exciting experiment in the history of the Buddhist tradition in which men and women, as well as families with children, are living and practicing together. And so far, the experiment is going very well. So one of the reasons the Zen Center has been able to break free from the old ways is entirely due to our founding teacher, Shunryu Suzuki, and his wonderful wife, Mitsu Suzuki, who encouraged all of us to try something new. As our Zen teacher, Suzuki Roshi allowed women and men to practice together at our monastery from its very beginnings, something unheard of in Japan. And his wife, my dear teacher of the Japanese tea ceremony, welcomed everyone at the Zen Center not only into the tea room, but into her kitchen as well, even long after her husband had died. So as one of the most inspirational teachers in my life, I want to tell you just a little bit about Suzuki Sensei, as we called her, and about the practice of tea as well. The tea ceremony is a Zen-inspired art form. Since the end of the Second World War, it's been primarily practiced by women in Japan, but now also in the West. Tea is all about feelings, as far as I can tell. Those exquisite feelings that come from being with old friends, from learning new things, and from honoring age-old craft. If all goes well, which it rarely does, it will take about 40 minutes to navigate the minute instructions required to produce 3 tiny sips of bright green tea. Now, all the while, your knees are on a mat at levels of discomfort that it's hard to imagine anyone would voluntarily be willing to bear. And yet, for unknown reasons, you stay there until you are done. And it's especially at times like that when the famous saying written on the scroll comes to life. Tea and Zen are one. Stay until you're done. So as I said, tea is all about feelings, feelings that lead you to know how wonderful life truly is, how wonderful to stand and walk, to eat and to visit with your friends, feelings that are all too easy to forget. And so we practice them again and again. We practice having feelings, all kinds of feelings. When I first decided to ask Suzuki Sensei if I could study tea with her, my motives were less than pure. I had no idea what tea was, nor was I particularly interested in finding out. I had no idea about any of it, but I wanted to get close to Suzuki Roshi, who had already died, and whose memory and reputation at Zen Center was the living basis for our community. Everyone was grieving who had known him, and there was his wife who had known him best of all. I wanted her to speak to me about her husband, which she rarely did. She didn't have to. Suzuki Roshi, as with teachers before him, wasn't gone. He was embodied in those who had loved him. And he still is, and so is she, and that's how it works. You love your teachers for all the things they've given to you through their selfless practice, such as this simple instruction that my tea teacher said to me: lift heavy things as if they are light, and lift light things as if they are heavy. I love Mrs. Suzuki because she was my teacher, and the parts of myself that I love best have come to me from people like her. I think all of us can think back on those people who opened us up to the light of this world, even in such simple gestures as sharing a meal or making a bowl of green tea. This act of making a bowl of tea in front of others is called the tamai. And it's the tamai that we study with Mrs. Suzuki in our classes every week. One of the many stories about the tradition of tea I particularly like are the ones that she told us about Sen no Rikyu, a 16th century Japanese tea and Zen master who perfected the tea ceremony and raised it to the level of an art form. Under Rikyu, the tamai, the utensils, the tea garden, the landscaping, the tea house architecture, were all governed by such aesthetic ideals as wabi, meaning deliberate simplicity in daily living, and sabi, meaning appreciation of the old and faded. But even more importantly, by a profound regard and respect for one's fellow human beings. And to illustrate this point, here's my favorite Sen no Rikyu story. One day, Rikyu was invited by a tea grower, an old farmer, to come for tea. The tea grower was very fond of the tea ceremony and practiced as often as time would allow. Rikyu arrived at the old man's tea house, bringing with him one of his promising young disciples as a second guest. Being very nervous, his hands visibly shaking, the grower made a number of obvious mistakes. And yet at the finish, Rikyu said to him in all sincerity, with a deep bow, "This tea you have made is the finest." On the way home, the disciple asked Rikyu how he could have made such a comment given the amateur performance by that man. Rikyu replied, "He made tea for me with his whole heart." So when I think about Mrs. Suzuki, wholeheartedness is certainly the dominant quality through which she lived her life. Whether she was teaching us tea, doing her daily exercises up and down the hall, singing Japanese children's songs at the top of her lungs, or carefully bowing each time she passed in front of the memorial to her husband, and each time she passed each of us. She was wholehearted. After many years, Mrs. Suzuki returned to Japan to live out the remaining days of her life, which were many. She died only a few years ago at the age of 101. I think she knew very well that Zen Center needed her to stay here for a while until what are called in Japanese the shinmei, or the new growth, had a chance to strengthen and to flower. Her presence and example were a through line from the temple life she'd known in Japan to our sincere efforts to ground our own cultural practices in Suzuki Roshi's simple and profound teaching. She took so many of us under her wing personally, and yet it wasn't really personal at all. She was not my friend, she was not my parent, she was my teacher. She had Dharma, meaning truth, to offer, as had her husband, his son and now their grandson, who have each taken the long plane ride to come here to America to teach us the essential meaning of Zen. And what is that? I would say that the essential meaning is that there is no essential meaning, referring to something other than itself, While making tea, make tea. While eating lunch, eat lunch. While washing the dog, wash the dog. It's so simple, and yet almost no one can pull it off. No one can pull off the veil of concepts through which we continuously evaluate and view the world. At least not until the bottom of our pockets have fallen out. Practice is not a matter of time or duration. It is always exactly what is happening right now. It is always in the form of you yourself as both the host and the guest of the present moment. Whether you're walking or kneeling, serving or receiving an offering, the practices of awareness arise in a boundless stream when you and the world appear inseparably together. Nothing to hold on to, nothing to take, no one to protect, and nothing to hate. The last time I made tea for Mrs. Suzuki, before she returned to Japan, I was having a pretty hard time, mostly because I kept crying. When I finally finished whisking and I looked into the tea bowl, there were tiny lumps floating on the surface. Not a very good sign. So I bowed and I told Sensei I was so sorry about the lumps. And when I looked up, she was smiling at me and she said, "Fusan, enjoy the lumps." So here's a final Zen story about another woman, that one being myself. This took place down in our monastery, and one day I was working as the head cook down at Tassajara, and a young man who'd been assigned to my crew responded to every instruction I gave him with a visible sneer and a grunt. So I finally asked him to please step outside to the back of the kitchen, and I requested that he tell me what was going on. He said, without the slightest bit of shame, "I don't like taking orders from women." To which I responded, in all sincerity, "You think I'm a woman?"
So our second speaker today is Sister Elizabeth Padilla. Sister Elizabeth is the program manager at the Anabodhi Retreat Center in Nevada and has been a spiritual educator since 1985. Her education and career includes work in theater, music, 20 years experience in human resources and program management, and 12 years of interfaith work, which includes having served on MIC's board of directors. She is trained as a facilitator in self-development, and she's fulfilling her life stream by reaching the heart and spirit through songs and through her work. Please welcome Sister Elizabeth Padilla.
Thank you very much. And Abbas Fu, thank you. That is, I just feel so humbled. I took so much wealth. I was moved by the experiences of the regard you had for your mentor and for your effort of the tea and, of course, using your teachings for difficult situations. And that closing statement was fantastic. And I'm honored to speak after you. And I saw her, I was there at the Marin Women's Foundation, or that honoring her as a woman leader in Marin. And so I got to witness her story from beginning to end. And I ask again, why is it when I hear the story of another, a story from a different faith tradition other than my own, that I feel validated, moved, and inspired to live my own tradition with more fervor? And I've asked that question, and each person I ask, I get a little bit more of a tidbit on what that, I would say, chemistry that we all know, because we wouldn't be here. Right, Barbara? I mean, you know, we wouldn't take this ride, because sometimes we meet up with the other and find it difficult to meet up with ourselves, you know. And that last demon was me. And how easy it is to thwart it outward. And so I would say that, because right now is a difficult time, we've got a lot going on, as you all know that story. And for me, story has been a way to understand life so that I could stand back from my own canvas to understand myself. And so being raised in Cupertino as a nice Catholic girl, ventured off into theater and performed in Beach Blanket Babylon as Snow White. But even in that zany character, in my heart of hearts, I did that for 5 years, 1,300 shows of cuteness, gone vamp, you know, she comes out of her closet, so to speak. And it was sort of a metaphor for my life. Who is a lich? Then I'm going to be out on a limb. I will be cutting myself off from the rest of the tree. But if I'm an instrument, if I connect to the seed, that sap that connects all of us as one human family, connect to the seed, then I nourish the whole tree. But of course I know the branch that sustains me, and I know where I belong. And so for me, the service that we do at our retreat center in Novato is to help people find what that personal blueprint is for them. Where do you sit on the tree? And how do you nourish this human family? So I'd like to close with a song. And this song is called Om Shanti Om. And that means I'm a peaceful soul. Om Shanti. Shanti is peace. Om, universal Om. I, the divine. Shanti. Shalom. Salam. Om Shanti. Om Shanti, Om Shanti. Shanti Om Shanti Om. I'm a peaceful soul. Om Shanti Om. I'm a peaceful soul. Bada hi sukha kar ye mantra manaha. Om Shanti Om. This great mantra brings such happiness that surrounds the soul. Om Shanti Om. I'm a peaceful soul. Om Shanti Om. I'm a peaceful soul. Om Shanti se hum bujaye hau dharti vyom. Hau dharti vyom. Om Shanti Om. Om Shanti Om. Sing Om Shanti, burn negativity that surrounds the soul. Realize you're a soul. Om Shanti Om. Om Shanti Om. Om Shanti की शक्ति से पत्थर ही होता मोम. The power of Om Shanti can melt the hardest stone. Om Shanti Om. I'm a peaceful soul. 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 Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, Sister Elizabeth. So our third and final speaker is Reverend Professor Yolanda Norton, who is a PhD candidate in Hebrew Bible, in Ancient Israel and Theology, and Practice Fellow at Vanderbilt University. Her current research interests include womanist interpretation, narrative and literary criticism, and the Persian period. In particular, her work focuses on the books of Genesis and Ruth and how each text treats born women and considers the ways in which insider-outsider paradigms in Scripture influence constructions of identity and facilitate the vilification and or oppression of women of color who encounter the biblical canon in the modern world. So prior to coming to San Francisco Theological Seminary, Professor Norton was a visiting instructor at Moravian Theological Seminary and adjunct faculty at Wesley Theological Seminary. She's ordained in the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, and has served in various ministerial capacities in the Washington, D.C. area and Nashville, Tennessee. She holds a Master of Divinity and a Master of Theological Studies degree from Wesley Theological Seminary and a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Syracuse University. And it looks like we might have some music to start us off. Is that right? So Ashley and John are going to bless us with some music to start, and then we'll have the professor.
When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, Mordecai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went through the city wailing with a loud and bitter cry. He went up to the entrance of the king's gate, for no one might enter the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. In every province, wherever the king's command and his decree came, there was great mourning amongst the Jews, with fasting and weeping and lamenting, and most of them lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's maids and her eunuchs came and told her, the queen was deeply distressed. She sent garments to clothe Mordecai so that he might take off his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. And then Esther called for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs who had been appointed to attend to her, and ordered him to go to Mordecai to learn what was happening and why. And Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate, and Mordecai told him all that had happened to him, and put the exact sum of money that Haman had promised to pay into the king's treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai also gave him a copy of the written decree issued in Susa for their destruction, that he might show it to Esther, explain it to her, and charge her to go to the king to make supplication to him and to entreat him for her people. And Hathach went and told Esther what Mordecai had said, and then Esther spoke to Hathach and gave him a message for Mordecai, saying all these things. Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not think that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at such a time as this, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another quarter, but you and your father's family will perish. Who knows? Perhaps you have come to royal dignity for just such a time as this. These are words from Esther. So you'll have to forgive me, but my mentor says you have to bear testimony. You have to speak your truth or they'll kill you and they'll say that you loved it. So here it is. Y'all, I'm tired. I'm tired of turning on the television and seeing the blood of black people running in the streets. I'm tired of seeing brown people turned away at borders that have welcomed and continue to welcome white people for generations. I'm tired. I'm tired of cultural appropriation. I'm tired of people who respond to the notion of Black Lives Matter with all lives matter because Black Lives Matter is an affront to their identity. I'm tired of good intentions. T-I-R-E-D, I'm tired. I'm tired of divisive religious institutions, tired of people with far too much energy to focus on regulating who people choose to marry, tired of callous, greedy, spiteful folks who don't care if children are fed, if people have health care, or if there are roofs over some people's heads. I'm tired. I'm tired of speaking love in the face of people who are determined to hate. I want to believe that the arc of the universe is long, but it's bent towards justice. I promise you, I want to. But like my foremother, Fannie Lou Hamer, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Amen.
Some days I want to walk through the streets with my black power fists in the air, singing James Brown. I'm say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. I'm so tired that some days I want to burn it all down. I'm so tired that some days I want to hide in the comforts of my home, hidden from the pain and the destruction and the death. I want to cling to the comforts of the things that I've earned. after years of being unseen and ignored and despised because of the color of my skin, the width of my nose, the nap of my hair, I want to revel in my accomplishments. I want to revel in the accomplishments of staring down racist and sexist systems and winning. All of this means that I have a particular sympathy for a woman by the name of Esther. She had lost enough. She was far from Judah. She had no understanding of home. Parents are gone. She lost enough, and she used what she had to get what she wanted. She had the titles, she had the palace, she was comfortable. Maybe she was tired. So I'm sympathetic that in the face of death and destruction, she wanted to hide. So what do we do when that's the moment in which we arrive? The beauty of this thing that I get to do, this thing called teaching, is that sometimes your students haunt you. And so, when faced with this question, what do you do when you're tired? I heard the voice of this tall, lanky student that I have, who sings a kind of music that those who know me know that I would not normally listen to. So all week, as I was trying to figure out the subscription, I heard John Leisinger singing the words, "Watch and pray." What does that mean? Watch. When I was a little girl, I used to sit in my grandmother's kitchen, and I would look at her while she cooked. And my grandma one day said, "Come and watch me." I said, "Nina, that's what I've been doing." She said, "No, baby girl, you've been looking. You've been looking at me, waiting for me to finish so that you can eat what I've made." But she said, "Come and watch." And I learned some things at the feet of my grandmother. I sat with her and I learned how to make biscuits and fried chicken and make collard greens, and I learned how to use my hands to create something. I started watching. I was no longer looking so that I could consume. I was watching so that I could create. I was participating in providing sustenance and hospitality for the people that I loved. I had learned to watch. For too many of us, we exist in the world and we're simply looking. We see homeless people on the street. We see people dying. We're looking at the world fall apart at the seams, and it's time that we watch. Time that we look intently with intention and perseverance and participate in the healing.
Amen.
It's time that we watch people living in poverty and do something about it. It's time that we stop looking at people hurting as we walk down the street and think that someday it'll get better. We have to watch with intention. So, Emily Towns, a mentor of mine, says we live at the rim bones of nothingness. Those of us who are marginalized live at the rim bones of nothing. We take wisdom from our past and from theory, from the textbook. My rim bones of nothingness is my grandmother teaching me to no longer look, but to watch. And then to pray. Prayer often looks like bowed heads and empty promises to God. Prayer becomes our passive excuse to do nothing. Prayer, too often, is that rhetoric that we send out into the ether and hope that some mysterious divine being will fix something. Hear me. Emily Towns says that the deepest spirituality occurs when we do something about the things that we see. She says you cannot claim any moral authority, any spirituality, if it doesn't call you to social witness and social justice. The deepest prayers don't happen on our knees. The deepest prayers don't happen with bowed heads. The deepest prayers happen with our hands and with our feet. The thing about this woman named Esther, this text called the Book of Esther, is that it almost didn't make it into the Bible. And it almost didn't make it into the Bible because there were no theophanies, there were no angels of the Lord, there was no temple, there was not enough ritual, and so people thought there was no God in this text. We've got to learn to unlink God talk and God walk.
All right.
There are plenty of people who know all the right words to say and have no intention to do anything about it. We, as those who are called to do this work, must learn to live with God walk. That means you may never say a word, but you do something. Pray. Hold some person's hand who's not had a meal and walk them to sustenance from your own pocket. Pray. Give up your privilege so that others might live. Too often when we talk about justice, it looks like guilt and shame. Guilt and shame does nothing but make us feel better about ourselves. If we are to live the truest forms of justice, what I've learned as womanist justice, we have got to let go of something that we own, something that we claim, so that others might flourish and shine brightly. I believe that the divine witness in this era is that we have all been created for such a time as this. Watch and pray.
Let's have a final round of applause for all three. Thank you, Boo. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Wanda, for your inspiration and your heart leading us forward as we put our prayers into our walk. So thank all of you for coming today and for joining us. Please join us for Love's Marin. Please join us for the immigration rally on May 22nd. Please sign up for our e-newsletter, which you can keep up with all of our activities. We thank you for your support, and also want to announce a Visionary Marin, which is our other big event of the year, will be Sunday, November 11th. Sunday, November 11th at Rhoda Shalom. And this year we will be honoring two education visionaries, Betty Hodges of the Hannah Project and Kim Mizuka of 10,000 Degrees. So join us on November 11th for that. And invite you, as we prepare to leave now, just to take a moment to be in silence. Notice what is present in your heart and your body, here and now. What's reverberating in your own soul that will carry you forward from this place? It's up to us to be the prayer of and for the world. It's up to us to live love. It's up to us to be the light. A closing word from Marianne Williamson. The universe is wired with the electricity of God, and each of us is a lamp. It doesn't matter the size or shape of the lamp. With every prayer, every thought of forgiveness, every meditation, every act of love, we plug in. The more of us who plug in, the more the darkness of the world will be cast from our midst. Thank you so much for plugging in today, and we'll see you again soon.